What if the reality you know is just one layer of a much deeper existence? Join us as we discuss awakening. Welcome to Creating Soul Growth. I'm Marlene McNaughton with my dear friend and co-host Ann Fernandez, a gifted channel and medium. During the pandemic, I had a spiritually transformative experience. Now together with Ann, we share divine messages and conversations to support your soul's journey. This podcast is for inspiration and reflection. It's not medical or psychological advice. Please seek professional support when needed, and how you apply what is shared here is always your responsibility. Hi everyone, I'm Marlene McNaughton, joined by my dear friend and co-host Ann Fernandez.
Hi everyone and welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us for our very first episode of Creating Soul Growth. We are both so excited to be taking this journey with you. We've chosen awakening for our very first topic because awakening really is where every conscious spiritual journey begins. It's really the first step to remembering who we truly are. So, Ann, why do you feel awakening is so important to the spiritual journey?
Well, you said it, Marlene. It is the first step, right? Because if we're not awake, we're asleep, right? Awakening just sort of opens that door so that we begin to explore not just, everything in our outer world, but we really actually get to a place where we can now explore all of this information and knowledge and wisdom that we've always had within us. And so I feel that awakening allows us to now begin to do that.
I agree. It really is. It's an amazing time because some people refer to it as the veil being lifted, because you start to question things that you just never really questioned in life before. And now you're questioning them from your heart.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree.
I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about your awakening, because your awakening is really an interesting one.
Well, we've all had awakenings in one way or another. It's just some people don't recognize sometimes. It takes them a while, right? But mine started when I was a child. And I think it has to be the fact that I grew up with no distractions in a small island, in a small village, no television, no phones, all of that stuff. So I think that was supportive of my first awakening. I think I was around 7 and I woke up out of sleep and there was a figure at the foot of my bed. And it's like, who are you? I'm Jesus, and I'll always be with you. And I went back to sleep, right? So
Oh
it's
my
so,
goodness.
as a kid, you're not really, I wasn't afraid of anything. I felt safe and comfortable. And then, after that, it's like once that first door opens up, it just continued for me afterwards. And I can share some more of that further down this as we discuss this.
Well, Ann, did you have any religious background when you were as a child? Because mine was so minimal. I'm interested if you
Ah,
had some.
yes, yes, I did actually. And I grew up with my father was Muslim. My father's from India. My mother is Catholic. She was from England. And all the people in my village were Hindus. But we never asked anyone, what religion are you? Everybody just celebrated together. And so it was really, I feel blessed having grown up in an environment where everyone accepted each other for their
Wow.
differences. I
Oh,
know.
that's so wonderful that everyone honored everyone else's beliefs.
Yes,
That's
yes,
what a beautiful
absolutely.
way to grow up.
Yes. What
Yeah.
about you? What was it
Well,
like for you?
yeah, my awakening is, well, I feel awakenings are as unique as our personalities because everybody's awakening is so different. And you and I are really a perfect example of that because mine happened as an adult during the COVID quarantine. So, and I didn't have much religion, as I mentioned before. As a child, it was very minimal, my exposure to religion. And then in my early adulthood, I did join a church, but it just didn't resonate with me. So I really didn't have much religion. But what I did have is I had a few paranormal experiences and I didn't feel scared by them, but they let me know that there's more to meets the eye out there. And it just, that had always sat with me that I was just, curious and mystified by it. And that's what really encouraged me to begin my spiritual journey during the COVID quarantine, was really having these paranormal experiences. But I just feel that everyone's, awakening is just so unique and different from each other. And I wanted to share with you one of the first messages I received from the divine spirits was, we are here to help you remember who you are. So how would you describe who we are?
Wow. That's the $1,000,000 question, Marlene.
Yes.
I think humanity has been asking that forever. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose, right? But perhaps
Yes.
today we're going to answer that.
Yes. Yes.
So the best way, I actually did a talk about this. The title of my talk was "Who do you think you are?" Uh, and so for me, I feel that when we peel away the layers of all of our beliefs, everything we have come to believe throughout our lifetime, taught by parents, taught by religion, taught by culture, just taught by our outer world, when we can peel away the layers and we drop down to a place within us, that's who we are. It's a
Yes.
stillness. You can call it divine place. You can call it God. You can call it your higher self. It really doesn't matter. But who we are is beyond our thinking mind. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yes. And I totally agree. And what happened is during the awakening, I did come to learn that there's so much more to us, that we are not who we think we are. We're not just human beings. As I understand it from my spiritually transformative experience, I learned that we are eternal beings. We're eternal divine beings of spirit that are having temporary physical experiences here on earth to create soul growth. This is what my whole experience of the 2-year dialogue with the divine spirits was about. So I learned, and not only are we divine eternal beings of spirit, but we're energy beings. And everything we do creates energy. And this energy transitions with us. When we transition from the physical world to the non-physical world, we're accountable for the energy we create.
Right. I agree with that 100%. And I think the other thing too is that once we have that awakening, we also realize that we're all one.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened when I was a child, having experienced all the different religions and cultures in a small community. I think that was just natural for me to just like, yes, of course we're all one.
Well, that's what's so interesting, because you're learning it as a child, and I had to learn it from Archangel Michael.
Right,
Archangel Michael he was the first one who shared that message
right.
with me, that we are all one. And then I would hear it repeatedly throughout my experience. But it was really made clear to me that we needed to understand that we are all connected and we are all one. So that is a very important message for people to understand, that we are all a part, as I would say, we are all a part of God, the source of all that is. So you can call God whatever name you're comfortable with, whatever is
Right.
your comfort of a name to be used. In fact, I was told we can call God by any name as long as we call God by the heart. So if you say it from your heart, because you have to, there's so many different cultures and they all have different names for God. So that really resonated with me when they said that. So, but once we realize that we are all a part of God, it just really changes how we see life.
Absolutely. As I'm listening to you, Marlene, I'm thinking, wow, that means if I'm loving to myself, I'm loving to other people, I'm loving to myself. If I'm spewing hate or anger or whatever, just negative energy out there, I'm also hurting myself. Not,
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah, sometimes we're having an argument with one person and we don't realize that energy, because everything is energy, is affecting everyone on this planet.
Yes,
And
there's a ripple effect,
right?
right? Because energy doesn't dissipate. Energy
Right.
just goes somewhere. So, right, the energy we create, it exists, and it affects the universe.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that because you just reminded me how, as I started to walk this path, I was always searching for like, well, I have to understand that before I can keep moving forward. And that was one of the things that came up that I was 100% sure of my journey. It was energy never dies. It it just transformed.
And that's something that the science community also agrees with. We're not always on the same page, the spiritual
Right.
community and the science community, but that is something that they agree with. So that's interesting, Anne. So, Anne, once a person awakens, do you have any advice on how they can nurture their awakening?
Absolutely. Yes. Going within. As you know, on my
I got the
voicemail,
chills, Anne. So there's my God
your
bumps.
response.
That yeah, confirmation. Yes,
Beautiful. I always say the only way out is in, right? And as you know, I've shared with you, Marlene, I've spent pretty much my whole life, in some form of meditation. So I would say that would be the number one thing. And I want to explain because people get a little uncomfortable. Oh, do I have to sit for 2 hours and meditate every day? No, you don't. You can go into that stillness. You can drop down within, beyond your thinking mind, while you're vacuuming, while you're listening
right.
to music, dancing,
Connecting with
walking.
your heart.
Yes, yes, walking in nature, so there's so many ways to go within, but that is the key. We're not going to find the answers outside of us. It's within.
Yes.
It's within.
I completely agree. And I think when people realize how this is such an important part of the spiritual journey, our whole perspective begins to shift because we just, everything, we see life totally in a different way. Let's talk about that, Anne. Let's talk about how awakening transforms us. How do you feel awakening affects our beliefs and our culture?
Wow. Okay, how
Mhm.
much time do we have? So, um, absolutely has an effect on us, right? Because we begin to see things differently. Everything we were told, like you said earlier, we begin to question. It's like all these layers and layers or veils, if you will. As we keep removing them, we suddenly have a different perspective. We recognize that perhaps the path we've been taking and everything we, believed is probably not the whole truth.
I totally agree because when we're a newborn baby, we're born into a culture. And this culture, we have no say so in it, but the beliefs of that culture become our beliefs just by having been born into them. So once you have your awakening, you realize that there's more to you about embracing and the power you have to choose to create your
Right.
own beliefs.
I love that you said that, the power, because, and this is what I love about what we're doing, Marlene, is that we're here to empower people, to to remind people that they are powerful beings, right? And I feel that the awakening actually, I guess it transforms us. Maybe that's a good word for that. It transforms so much about us and everything that we thought we knew, right? On many
Right.
levels.
Right. And I feel that's why you and I, we even came together to do this podcast because both of us were on the same page that we're doing this podcast with the intention of helping people to embrace their power of who they really
Right.
are.
Yeah, and to make conscious choices, right, in our
Yes.
lives. I have to share something very quickly about that because, like you, Michael the Archangel appeared to me and all these other beings, right? That's next time we'll talk about those things. Uh, but one of the things I was told is that you always have free choice. We always have free choice. How do you feel about that?
Oh, yes, they talked to me about that a lot. They were saying that we have free will and we have to respect it. It's a gift from God. And I use the name God, but then I like to finish up with God, the source of all that is, because um, I have to say that the divine spirits told me they prefer to call God source because they said there's too many untrue beliefs attached to the name God. But they recognize for me, I was still comfortable with using the name God. And when I use the name God, I do not attach any of these untrue beliefs. To me, God is all loving. So I did want to just kind of mention that too. So what I learned is that we are here to make conscious choices with the gift of free will we receive from God. And actually, the divine spirits were really careful with never like stepping on my free will. Like, for instance, this is a perfect example. During my experience, they told me there will be a book. And when they told me this, I was like, am I going to do a book? And they said yes. But see, they wouldn't say you are to do a book, because then that would be interfering with my free will. They could not tell me to do anything. They can share with you what you need, but they will not interfere with our free will. And that's just, and we're not to interfere with anyone else's free will.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Perfectly said. Same here. When I wrote my book, it wasn't like you're going to write a book. It was like, because that was too scary for me. I'm,
Right.
I'm sure you felt the same way,
Oh, I
right?
had no idea. I was like, I'm supposed to write a book? Like, how's this going to happen? I
Right.
mean, yeah, writing a book was not on my bucket list.
Right. But that was one of the things I feel that awakening helped me with, and possibly you too, because I was awakened, even though I would get into my thinking mind, I could still get these downloads and information that will come up naturally, so that I could write my book, so that I could continue to walk my spiritual path and to do and teach and support others, right, on this journey.
Yes.
So I feel that going within again is the key, because it's like going to the gym to develop your muscles, right, and to get stronger. You don't go once, you just go as often as you need to, and it's the same thing. It's an inner muscle that you're developing, but we're just so used to using our senses as far as see it, feel it, touch it, that type of thing. But this is beyond that. We're
Yes.
right. It's an
Yes.
unseen.
And it was shared with me because when my awakening was unfolding, I had actually asked my spirit guide that I was communicating with at the time, well, what can I say to, to God to say, I'm ready and willing to take this journey, that I'm opening myself up, that I want to now, I was having my awakening, and I just was like, is there anything I can say? And he gave me this beautiful message. He said, you can say, I am open to receive and allow all that Source has to offer me. So I say that daily, if not a
Oh,
few times. So, yes, because again, as we talked about, they will not interfere with our free will. It's up to us to make the choices that we make in life. And we're here because the choices we make create soul growth, because we're in a third dimensional planet, which is of contrast, that our life, they don't have that in the other dimensions. The other dimensions do not have the contrast. And I was told by Archangel Michael, we have so many more opportunities to create soul growth while we are here. And once we transition, we don't have those kind of opportunities to create soul growth that we do here.
right. Absolutely. This is school. This is how I refer to it.
Mhm.
And when you're in school, it's always about learning, right? And so
Right.
what I love about that idea, and at least that perception, is that, our limiting beliefs and our fears begin to dissipate, right? Especially as we learn to trust that inner guidance and we walk our path. It's not like all of a sudden life is going to be amazing and wonderful, right?
Right.
Because lessons can be challenging, but
Absolutely. And they're meant to be. They're meant to be. That's
yeah,
how we create soul growth.
right, exactly. And I think you and I talked about this before. I was imagine it because I'm so visual, like a roller coaster ride. It's like, oh, here we go again. I have to learn this. And now I can breathe for a minute until the next one comes along,
Yes.
right? And I know you have some sort of vision or idea about that too.
Well, I was taught by the spirits because, yes, this was a question I had because there's, as we all know, there's a lot of things going on in this world that are very disturbing and we, cannot understand and such. But what I learned was that if we focus on them in the negative, our energy goes to that incident and or event or whatever the situation is that we feel is of a lower energy. That if we're in a fear state, we're sending lower energy to it. And so what I was taught is to pray for those situations and to send loving energy. So again, because everything we think, every thought we have, everything we do, everything we say creates energy. So that's again comes into play about the conscious choices. So if there's something that we don't understand, it's not that we condone it, but if we can send love to it, that's going to help. How can I say, for lack of a better word, diffuse it more? It's going to send it loving energy instead of giving it the energy to keep it going and making it stronger in a negative energy. Does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely, 100%. Because, as a hypnotherapist, that's exactly where my beliefs lie. It's that whatever we think, whatever we feel, whatever we believe, whatever we put our energy on becomes our reality, right?
Yes. And I was taught that. I was taught to think and feel what you want and put your energy into that. Yes, to have it happen and unfold. So, Anne, do you think that awakening is ongoing?
100%. Because from the time I was a child and had that first awakening, if you will, each time I grew, whether it was on physical, spiritual, mental level, each time I grew with that awakening and that information and that wisdom that came in, it would shift me to the next level. And so there would be another awakening. So it's like evolution, right? It just keeps
Yes.
evolving. So,
Yes, yeah, I totally agree. It's not just one event. It is something that does continue on. And actually, Archangel Michael would say to me throughout my experience so many times, open your mind, open your mind. And honestly, like he would say it after I thought like the day before I opened my mind. I mean, because I was very new into this spiritual journey. And so I said to him the one day, Archangel Michael, so is opening your mind perpetual? And he said, opening your mind is miraculous because it's eternal. So, and I feel this kind of goes into what you're saying because of the fact that I feel our awakening is eternal because we will be opening our minds not only throughout our lives here, but beyond when we
right.
transition to the non-physical world. So I feel our awakening is just going to continue indefinitely.
100%. Absolutely. I agree with that. And by the way, we could do another podcast about that.
Yes, definitely. We'll have to get into that because there's a
Right.
lot to unfold there. Yeah.
Right. How energy moves from into every timeline and every existence.
Yes.
I thought it might be important, as we sort of wrap things up to perhaps just maybe share some things, some tools that people can apply, some simple tools. And of course, the number one for me is some form of stillness, going within, listening to that inner voice within and developing their own intuition, learning how to discern information out there in the world, like what what is true for them and what isn't. And the biggest thing I think, Marlene, and I'm curious if you agree with this, is trust, is learning how to trust yourself, right?
Yes. I was given that message repeatedly too of trust, trust, trust. And it's actually the words trust, trust, trust I learned had to do with the Trinity. I thought the Trinity was
Oh,
religious, and they taught me no, the Trinity is just loving. And the reason they would say the words trust, trust, trust was because they were putting in the three aspects of the Trinity when they would say the words in triplicate. I'd like to leave us with a short summary of today's conversation. Awakening is the doorway to remember who we truly are.
That is probably the most important thing you've said today, Marlene.
Yes.
Everything else was interesting and wonderful information, but remembering who we truly are is the key.
It really is. It really is, Anne.
Because when we remember who we are, it feels like going home.
Right. And people might say, what do you mean remembering? But you have to understand, we're eternal beings. So it's not like, okay, you have an awakening and you know who you truly are. You're remembering because this isn't your first rodeo. We may think it is, but it's not our first rodeo. So we're eternal beings. And so that's why the word remember is used, because that's what they had said to me, is you to remember who you truly are.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, this was wonderful. I had such a great time.
Oh, I always have such a great time with you, Anne. So I am so thankful that you agreed to do this podcast with me, my friend. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we really appreciate you being here. And in the next episode, we're going to be discussing spirit communication. So we really hope you'll join us for our next episode too.
I'm so excited about that because I love talking about spirit.
Yes.
Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you so much, everybody. This has been so lovely. Really appreciate you taking your time to be with us. Bye, everybody.
Bye.